Okay, there's a slight maintenance issue with beta two-strokes, and I'll detail the possible causes and what it most likely is if you have the classic symptoms, so to speak. Okay, so what'll happen is you'll ride your bike fine all day. You won't have any problems. This is concerning the coolant system. You come home, park your bike. Next morning you come out to check out your bike, and over on that side there'll be coolant on the ground, about a little puddle about that big. And then you'll of course come over and open your radiator cap to look in there and see what's going on. And depending how pressurized it is, some coolant could come out, or you're most likely just going to hear like a whoosh sound. Now I've read three possible causes for this. Cause number one is beta used a coolant ratio that is incorrect, like a 70-30 mix instead of a 50-50. The other reason I have heard is there was a batch of radiators that the flux from manufacturing wasn't cleaned out properly, and it reacts with the coolant and generates fumes and gas pressure. But if you have the classic symptoms, like I said, oh, here comes Rick with his lawnmower. What you'll get is that whoosh when you take off the radiator cap and some coolant on the floor the next morning. Now, it doesn't happen when you ride. You won't. If you're leaking coolant while you're riding, you might have a thermostat issue. But to fix any of these issues, you would want to drain your coolant and flush your radiator. And what the cause of this is the O-rings under the piston dome are shit. Beta had some bad batches of rings for those. So what a lot of guys do to solve this is to replace the O-rings under the dome with KTM parts. Now, behind the scenes, Beta engineers designed the motors for the KTM 65s and 85s, the Huskies too, and I believe there's a lot of use of Beta engineering on the KTM and Husqvarna motors in general, because there's a ton of parts that are interchangeable between the two brands. But with the bad O-rings under there, the little rubber gaskets, gas pressure goes back into the coolant system, and it pressurizes, and there's no relief for the pressure. So the next morning when you come out and check your bike, it will have continued to build up and squirt some coolant out on the ground. So to fix it, you got to drain your radiators. So on the Beta under here, there's a bolt right there it's the one with the copper washer. So you undo that and your coolant will come out. You should take your skid plate and shit off. And when you open the radiator cap, it'll super piss out real far. So I had Junior with a funnel and a milk jug to catch it. After we did that, we took a gallon of distilled water and filled the radiators up with that, and then drained all that out. So they should be flushed. If you're going to do that, definitely use distilled water. Don't use tap water. And the next thing I'll have to do is take this dome off. It's no big deal. Right under the dome will be some rubber O-rings. I'll show you those here in a minute. But one thing that's super fucking annoying is this bolt right here is a tamper-proof bolt. See, it has that pin in the middle of it. So I had to get a hex bit with the hole in it for tamper-proof or security bolts. The rest are normal. There's a bracket here, so we're going to take that bolt out. We're going to loosen that bolt. This bracket should swing out of the way. We got to take our spark plug out, and we have to loosen this hose clamp here and pull that coolant hose off. Don't do this without draining your coolant, because shit will go everywhere. Once that's off, we'll be able to take that off and replace the O-rings. They're right there on the surface in little grooves. But it's not too hard of a job. It's just more annoying than anything else. Now that should fix this issue of the coolant system getting back pressure. If it still leaks after that, you might have a thermostat issue. The thermostat is right there. And Beta does have a thermostat replacement kit that they'll send to your dealer, or some guys have just replaced the O-ring on that, and also use some black goo, gasket maker to kind of seal that up. But I don't think I have that issue. This is, like I said, the symptoms of the O-rings on the piston dome being poopy. So you can't order Beta replacement parts, spares, direct from any place I could find. But because the KTM and Beta engines are pretty identical, they do use the same size O-rings. So from Rocky Mountain, I just ordered the rings. And here's what they look like. They're only a couple bucks, so I got 2 sets of them. I'll throw pictures in here so you can see the exact part numbers. Basically, if you have an X-Trainer 300 or a 300RR, you order the O-rings for the KTM 300XCW. And if you have a Beta 250RR, get the O-rings for the KTM 250XCW. You can just use the OEM parts lookup on Rocky Mountain and add them to your cart. So yeah, that's pretty much what's going to go on here. I'm not going to film the whole job, but I'll cut back in when I have the dome off, just so you can see what all that bullshit in there looks like. We'll be able to see the top of the piston. Also, we'll be able to take a look at the spark plug, which I expect to be kind of gummed up because the first tank of gas, you run a 100-to-1 ratio with the oil injection. And also, I was riding like a dick, so I was just like gurgling around. All right, so I'll be back once I get that crap off there. Okay, here's the spark plug. It's got this little rubber boot on it. It's kind of black. There's gunk on it. But I'm not real worried about that because the first tank of gas, like I said, is you have to run 100-to-1. And so I'll just clean this up and reuse this one for right now. Now, let's see what else we got. Here's that tamper-proof bolt. That's out of there. And where is it? Where is it? Here's the hex for removing that. So it has the hole in the middle so that it can go in there over top of the post. Got that on Amazon. Okay, let's go take a look at the old piston. All right, so this is the piston dome. Oop. Look at all that. Look at all that oil. Yeah. Sorry, the lighting's a little bad. I'd wait all day for the mailman to bring that tool. But yeah, so those are the O-rings. That's the small one, and that's the big one. So I'm just going to pop those out of there, put some grease on the new ones, and then close this back up. All right, I'll be back. All right, so the job's done. I finished it Friday. Today's Sunday. We rode yesterday. So far on the floor, there's no coolant here. A couple install notes on this. When you tighten the dome bolts back up, you want to do it in a crisscross pattern. Tighten them till they just stop, and then the service manual wants you to tighten them to basically half torque in a crisscross pattern, and then go around again and tighten them to full torque. So it was 15 Newton meters and then 27 Newton meters. Now, on this bracket thing here, okay, there's a bolt that goes through here and a nut on the other side. There's a bolt here. This silver whole thing swings up once this bolts out. Same on the other side. Now, the engine service manual says to use Loctite on these top ones, one on each side, and then like I said, this one has a nut on the other side, but the service manual says to use 37 Newton meters. That is a ridiculous amount of torque for these. If you check like KTM service manuals for the similar type connectors, the dome bolt brace, It's like 25 Newton meters. I suggest you do that because this one was fine, that one was fine. On the other side, it actually stripped the threads off the bolt. Yeah, I knew some shit was going to happen like that, but that's what happens when a bolt this small is over torqued. And once you strip those threads off the bolt, it'll just the bolt will spin freely in through the hole, through the other piece, but it won't back out if you try to take it out. So you got to do a bunch of bullshit to get the bolt back out and replace it. So anyway, so that's just a little friendly service note. A lot of the beta torque values, in my opinion, are very high. No, I'm not a mechanical engineer, but if you compare similar type fasteners from like Huskies or KTMs to the same type fasteners in what KTM recommends for torque versus beta, it's a pretty big difference. For example, the rear axle nut is it's an alloy nut, and the beta service manual and owner's manual says use 130 Newton meters, which is 95.8 foot-pounds. That's a fucking lot. So a lot of people online in the forums use like between 60 and 70 foot-pounds, which is what the like KTM manuals recommend. I think I use like 65. For the front, I can't recall off the top of my head the values, but they seemed okay, so I just used those. But yeah, I would just be very careful about these small bolts and fasteners and things. I did use the recommended torque values for the piston dome because those were the same as what KTM says to use on theirs. All right, let's go up here and we'll just open the radiator cap and we'll see if we get any whoosh or shit happening here. So the bike's been sitting all night. All right, I didn't hear nothing. After the first ride, when I saw the coolant and I took that off, like you heard a very big whoosh, almost like if you were opening up a shook up beer or something. Okay, the other thing, won't be able to really see it, but since I changed the coolant, what you want to do after the first ride after you change your coolant is you want to just go ahead and check that and top it off. So because as you ride it, like the system pressurizes, and there's different passages and things within the engine where the coolant fills up. So that's pretty much it. Looks like it fixed this issue for me. So if you're having this problem, that's what I would suggest you try first. All right, I'll see you later.